Well, good morning. Happy Thursday, May 2nd, 2020. Beautiful day outside. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day. Really do appreciate when you join me for these. It kind of makes it worthwhile. Man, what a beautiful day it's going to be today. It's kind of been, I don't know, it seems to me like it's been a little bit cooler than what it could be. But maybe I'm in anticipation of the summer where I know it's going to get hot. But I don't actually think it's too bad outside. I think it's kind of nice myself. So I know some people like it a little bit cooler at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But for me, it's almost perfect. And you go in the shade and it's even like more perfect. And I've been thinking about planting a few more shade trees around the house just to even provide more shade. But I haven't done that yet. TEP has a program that I think you get 2 shade trees a year, and they're little tiny guys in like little 5-gallon pots. Probably takes 10 years for them to develop into a shade tree. But, in 10 years from now, could be really, really nice. We have birthdays, so let's go over to the birthdays. Today is the 2nd, so Kat Sutherland, happy birthday to you. And then on Saturday is Preston Wilson. Happy birthday. And then on Sunday is Bill Stockman. So happy birthday to all of you. May you have a great day in the Lord. And let's see. Polly really wants to join us in the morning, but she's kind of been kicked off of Facebook and she hasn't quite figured out how to get back on. But what I've been doing is making a separate recording for her of this and uploading it to YouTube, and then she's able to watch it on YouTube. So at least we're able to, she can't join us in the morning, but I know that she's with us in heart and soul. But she can't join us yet because she hasn't quite figured out what's going on with Facebook. But I know that she's been, because when I send her the link to the YouTube file, she'll let me know when she's watched it, and she's happy about that. Let's see. So today is Thursday. We won't meet Friday, Saturday. Sunday is church, and then we'll meet back again on Monday. I meant to look this up. I think there's like 20-something chapters. 2 Samuel. I'm just very curious about how many chapters are in 2 Samuel. 24. Maybe. So we're in 16. We have another 8 chapters. No, we're 19. We have another 5 chapters to go in Samuel, 2 Samuel. So it's coming up rather quickly. Probably in the next couple weeks, we'll be able to finish 2 Samuel. All right, let's get into our study. Absalom is dead. David is on the other side of the Jordan River from Jerusalem, and he is trying to figure out how to get back to Jerusalem. One of the things about David is that he seems to be very conscious about his power and how he wants his power. I'm sure there are people that naturally assume that now that Absalom's dead, David should be in charge. But remember, there were probably people who were excited about Absalom rising to power. And in order for David to come back and lead, he must have the consent of those being led. It's one of those types of relationships. And there are times in life when you're not a leader unless you have the consent of the people by which you lead. There was a company called Gore-Tex. I'm sure it's still around, but they used to give speeches about who is the leader in Gore-Tex. And you'd think, well, of course, the leaders are the managers and the owners and all that sort of thing. But Gore-Tex had a very flat leadership structure. And what they said was that if you called a meeting and people showed up, that meant you were a leader. At some level, right? People are willing to give up of their time, what they're doing that day, to travel to a different department or to go into a conference room and listen to what you have to say. And then from there, if it was a new product line development or some initiative within Gore-Tex, if you were able to garner enough support to do that, then you were a leader. And the reason why this was so unusual is because most companies, leadership is in the management section. And yet some of the best ideas come out of the people who are actually performing the labor. And so Gore-Tex encouraged people that if they had a new idea or a new thing or something like that, that they would allow anybody to become a leader. And the way that that leadership was displayed was by somebody saying, I want to do some new thing, and people would show up at Gore-Tex. And sometimes it never went to anything. People would say, yeah, that's a dumb idea, never mind. They wouldn't show up again. But sometimes they would call a meeting and people would say, yeah, this idea has legs, or this program has legs. And it would continue on. And then this person would lead that program. And I kind of feel like churches are more like Gore-Tex, because there are so many things and opportunities for a church to do that if you just limit the leadership of the church into, the pastor or the staff or something like that, you're really, really limiting the ability of a church to move forward on something. And so I believe churches should flatten the leadership structure and encourage anybody in the congregation that if they have an idea, well, let's pursue it and see if it has some legs. And, not every church does it perfectly. And obviously, if you come up with a new idea, one thing we've learned in church work is that if you come up with a new idea, it impacts every other ministry in the church. It's like, no, it doesn't. Yes, it does. I guarantee you. If you come up with new thing, or let's say that 10 people show up and they're all on board with that, but they're also involved in other ministries, will those other ministries suffer because of this new program? So everything is interconnected like spaghetti in a church. And so while it is very, very good for a church to encourage leadership at all levels, the church also needs to understand that there has to be some level of interface between that particular new ministry, new task, new initiative, and the rest of the congregation. David appears to be a person who really, really understands that his leadership is completely dependent upon the consent of the people of Israel. And now that Absalom is dead, the question is, how does David go back? Does David go back into leadership? And if he does go back into leadership, how is that done? Does he take it by force, or does he wait a little bit to see if perhaps those people who he is going to lead call for him, like a call to come and lead us? And David is wise to just put a pause on it, to press the hold button a little bit to see how this all shakes out. As I've always said, David is an incredible leader. And this is one of those times where I think other leaders might naturally say, okay, I've defeated Absalom. There's nobody in my way. I'm going to go claim my throne again in Jerusalem. Where David's like, let's just see how this plays out a little bit. So we'll start reading in 2 Samuel chapter 19, beginning of verse 9. Throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled the country to escape from Absalom. And Absalom, who we appointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? So there does seem to be a little bit of confusion that those tribes that had pledged their allegiance to Absalom instead of King David, they're wondering, should we bring David back or not? Because we pledged our allegiance to Absalom, and should we go get David? And they're arguing among themselves. And obviously, there are a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. If you pledged your allegiance to Absalom, will David believe that you're going to follow him now? If David wasn't good enough, is there somebody else that would be good enough? And there's all these kind of questions. Whenever there's a leadership vacuum, normally people will clamor, those natural leaders will clamor to live in that leadership vacuum And there doesn't seem to be that, but there does seem to be a debate about whether or not they should bring David back. Verse 11. King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the ark back to this palace, since what is being said throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters? You are my relatives, my own flesh and blood, so why should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you are not the commander of my army for life in place of Joab. So Amasa, David wants to put Amasa in place as the king's general to replace Joab. So David is trying to navigate this whole situation. Back in Jerusalem, you have Zadok and Abiathar. You may remember Zadok. Zadok is the older priest. He wanted to accompany David with the ark, and David said, no, you're old, go back and stay in Jerusalem. Be faithful to Absalom, and if it's possible, help spoil the plans. But now David sends a message to Zadok and says, should the king come back to the palace? And, I hear this grumbling in Israel, and I'm not entirely sure yet how I want to do this or if I want to do this. But if I do come back, tell Amasa that instead of Joab, he will be leading the armies, which is interesting. We haven't really heard a lot about Amasa, but David feels like he would be good as opposed to Joab to lead the armies. Yeah, the people are probably... Joab appears to be a great military general. And David takes his advice in some instances, but not in other instances. And right now, the fact that Absalom is dead and there's no threat to the throne whatsoever is not on David. It's on his Joab. Joab is the one who thrust the spear through Absalom to make sure that he wouldn't be able to usurp the throne of David. All right, verse 14. He won over the hearts of the men of Judah so that they were all of one mind. And they sent word to the king, return, you and all your men. And then the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. So it appears that by David sending this message to Zadok and letting it percolate for a while, the people finally came to the conclusion, maybe David should be king. He was king. He knows what he's doing. Absalom came, tried to take over the throne, but David is the rightful king. Maybe we shouldn't have pledged our allegiance to Absalom. Let's all pledge allegiance to David and make him king. So David hears this message. He comes back, but he stops at the Jordan River. And he's like, in order for me to cross over the Jordan, I need the people to know that when I do this, I am now king. Because Israel, most of it is, Israel and Judah are mostly over the other side of the Jordan River. That will signify to everybody that he's crossing over, that he's now king. It kind of reminds me of the Rubicon when, was it Julius Caesar or was it Constantine? I can never remember these things, but one of the leaders of the Roman Empire was fighting, must have been Constantine, I can't remember, but he came up to the Rubicon. He knew that when he crossed over the Rubicon, he was going against he's basically taking leadership. And David is kind of the same thing. He's going to come up to the Jordan River, but once he crosses over, he is going to be king, and everybody has to accept him as king. And so he waits on the other side of the Jordan, kind of waits for the people to assemble to see how he is brought over the Jordan River. So he went as far as Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. And with him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished. So a couple people here who are going to help David cross over the Jordan. The first one is Shimei. Now, you may remember Shimei from chapter 16. He was the one that when David was fleeing Jerusalem, he was of the house of Saul, and he was very, very upset that David had been the leader, and he was kind of just, I want to call him a whack job, but I mean, he was basically throwing stones at the king and saying, "You're not the rightful king. It should be from the house of Saul. You're an usurper of the king. It shouldn't be you. It should be somebody else." And I think it was Joab that said, "Should we kill him?" And David's like, "No, I'm being pursued by my son Absalom. I got bigger fish to fry than this Shimei guy." And so they leave him alone. And then you'll remember that Ziba was the steward of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was also from the house of Saul, the last remaining grandson, the son of Jonathan, of the house of Saul. And when it came time to flee, Ziba tried to foil the plans of King David. He brought him a donkey. What did he bring? Donkey and figs and things like that. And then he didn't. He asked, like, where? He basically foiled the plans of Mephibosheth and made it seem like Mephibosheth was not on board with King David. And so he also goes down. So now you have Shimei and Ziba, who both are people who were not necessarily faithful to David. But now that they know that David is king and he's coming back, they're going to go grovel at the king's feet and say, "Oh, we're loyal to you. We've always been loyal to you." But we know that they haven't always been loyal to King David. We'll continue reading. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king. Grovel, grovel, grovel. And he said to him, May my Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my Lord left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first from the tribes of Joseph to come down and meet my Lord the king. And then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed." So Abishai remembers that this Shimei guy was throwing stones and cursing King David when David was leaving and Absalom was pursuing him. And yeah, I mean, I think David could kill this guy, Shimei, but David is not necessary. David's trying to figure out who's true to follow him and who's not. And he doesn't appear to be the kind of guy who wants to lead by force. In the Middle East, there were a lot of rulers, Saddam Hussein, others that always ruled by force. When you rule by force, if anybody goes against you, then you kill them. And sometimes you don't just kill them. Sometimes you torture them. And this is how mobs stay intact. This is how many, many, many leaders who are dictators, that's how they stay intact. They put the fear of the dictator in all the people. David does not appear to be that kind of leader. He wants to lead with the consent of those being led. I heard stories of some of the tortures that Saddam Hussein did. And some of them were brutal and terrible. And you wouldn't want to die this type of death any way possible. And so you were loyal to Saddam Hussein simply because you didn't want to die like that. And it works for a while until there are people who are willing to give up their life and risk a painful death to try to overthrow these dictators. But David does not appear to be one of those people. Verse 22, David replied, "What does this have to do with you, you son of Zeruiah? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I am king over Israel?" So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king promised him on oath. And so Shimei will not die. David shows his first act of grace. He could have killed him, but he doesn't. this will probably go over well. David is taking a calculated risk. He can rule by force or rule by the consent of the people he's ruling. And he's going by the second option. And I do believe that this is part of the success of King David, that he does not rule with an iron fist. Then we hear about Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet or trimmed his mustache or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. And when he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He said, "My lord the king, since I'm your servant, am lame." I said, "I will have my donkey saddled and I will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servants to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from the Lord my king. But you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king?" And the king said to him, "Why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land." So now the king finds out the truth from Ziba. When he heard from the donkeys and he heard from Ziba that Mephibosheth wasn't coming because he didn't support King David. Now Mephibosheth tells him the truth. It's like, "I supported you. I wanted to come, but Ziba foiled my plans." So the king said, "Okay, I understand now. You and Ziba will divide the land, and you can disassociate yourself from Ziba." If anything, King David should have killed Ziba. But what does Mephibosheth say? Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take everything, now that the Lord my king has returned home safely." So Mephibosheth is like, all that land, everything that you had apportioned to both of us, it doesn't matter anymore. As long as the king is safe, that's all that matters. I will cling to you and not cling to the riches that are rightfully mine. And I think this is how we are in the arms of Jesus, right? We have all these things that God's given us, and we think we find security in them, in our house or our home or our job or our career or our family or all these different things. And these are the things that give us strength. But it's a false sense of security because all that stuff could eventually go away. And the only thing that gives us true security or strength is being safely in the kingdom with Jesus in charge. Jesus has the cattle of 1,000 hills. Jesus has his Holy Spirit that guides and directs and gives us strength when we need it. The only constant that a Christian has is not in the things of this world, but in the true surety of the things of the next world. And Mephibosheth sees that. He sees that his only security really is David. All the other things, and Ziba failed him, crops can fail, all these things. Mephibosheth is completely surrendering everything of his life to King David and saying, "I don't need any of those things. All I need is you." And we as Christians can say the same thing to Jesus. All the things of this world, I don't need it. All I need is you. Reminds me of that song, "I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather have him than treasures untold. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world can give today. And to be a king of a vast domain, to be held in sin's dark sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today." Man, that is a great prayer. It's the one that Mephibosheth is saying to David. But it's one we as Christians can say too. As long as we've got Jesus, we've got everything. We truly do. All right, I think we'll end it there. So we'll come back at verse 31. Let me mark that down. And then we'll come back the next episode there. Let's close in prayer. Dear God, thanks for all that you do in our life. Help us to cling to you and not to the things of this world. In Jesus' name, amen. And let me go back over to Facebook here. Yeah, I know. We'll try to get the Polly thing fixed because I really think she wants to be on Facebook, but there's nothing that we can do. It's kind of, she has to do it from her end. She has a new email address. I don't know if you know that, but her old email address doesn't work anymore. She's had a new one for a number of months. That could be part of the problem too. So if you need her new email address, you can go get it from her. All right. Thank you for joining me. And I pray that you have a great weekend and the rest of the day. And we'll see you later. God's blessings. Bye.